I'm talking about the mystical way today, and that's the way of Jesus. In many early times, that movement, and we call it the Christian movement today, I don't know that Jesus would affirm that or not. I know he wouldn't go along with a lot of the things that are being taught in his name. As a matter of fact, I was sort of thinking about what he might say in my prayer time this morning, and I wrote this down. Notes about the infinite way. So many try to make me a superhero, and I am not that. I am only energy and consciousness. You are all swimming in it. The Christ consciousness. It's like what you might refer to as magic. Whatever you are being with your thoughts and feelings creates the cosmic substance around you. This determines whether you draw yourself to good or whether you continue to draw very painful, sometimes extreme events to you. For what purpose? Well, there's only one purpose, and that is to wake up in this lifetime. To wake up and smell the roses, as they say. No. Wake up to the magnificence of the world around you. The cosmic ocean of creativity, love, light, and good. Call this essence, this swirl of good, anything you like, any name that suits you. I think he would have said, I am a messenger of light because I have advanced to the level of Christhood. This is easy to do once you understand the patterns and techniques to continue being love and light no matter the circumstances. Developed compassion, strength, peace, determination, openness, forgiveness, psychic skills, etc. You are at a higher level now than you were yesterday. Why? Because you've asked. Here's a little advice. He says, be me today. Be the cosmic Christ today, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. With love, your beloved brother. Thank you for being open. Thank you for being a messenger of my truth, of the truth. The mystical way. There have been many, many mystical teachers over time, haven't there? But the one that is best known, of course, is the one that we know as Jesus, Jeshua. He lived 2,000 years ago. The teachings of the masters, particularly the parables of Jesus, teach us so much. To tell stories was a brilliant way to teach in those times and to stay relevant always, right? You know how much easier it is, don't you, to listen to an hour lecture or somebody that throws a few stories in there that you can understand and relate to, maybe even laugh at. Someone said to me after church one Sunday, they said, "You know what I love about your talks? You paint us a picture of exactly what that was or what that looked like, what that feeling should have been, what that demonstration should be, how to live it." I said, "Good." Maybe I'm on an 8th grade level, and that's great. That may be where we ought to teach, but to tell in stories, that's where it's at. Well, see, Jesus knew that. He knew that his stories would be told over and over and over again. And one thing he did, he spoke over the head sometimes of those he was speaking to. Now, why did he do that? So they'd go away and think about it. And they'd think about it, and they'd have a desire in their hearts to understand this. And one of the things that happens when you are on the spiritual path, you have to first want it. And if you don't want it, you're not going to get it. You ask. I remember early, I don't know, maybe 80s, I don't know when it was. I was fairly young, especially compared to now, and I think of it as very young, but I remember thinking, I don't understand the biblical teachings the way they've been taught to me. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand this, God. I remember I even lay down. I was at home alone. The kids were at school, Dan was at work, and for some reason I was home alone, which wasn't often in those days. You know how it is when you have robust children and all sorts of things, and a husband that can't sit still more than 5 minutes. And right, JR, Helen? We know about that. And I remember I had been praying, and I didn't know anything about unity. I didn't know there was anything out there except the traditional religions. You were either Protestant or not. Protestant or Catholic, that was all I knew. And I remember, though, wanting something so badly. There was something in me, it was my spirit stirring, wanting me to wake up, and I didn't know how. All I knew was what I was doing. I was going to work every day. I was doing the best job I could with integrity. I knew that I wanted to do my job with integrity, whatever it was, but I also wanted something spiritual. And like everybody, when I was really young, I read Edgar Cayce and everybody else coming down the pike, and that didn't really work for me either, but I knew that that was true and that was real, and that he had existed and he had had those experiences, then others did too. And I just prayed to God that or whatever power was out there, I just prayed to understand. I want to know you in my heart. I want to understand if Jesus has a story for me. I want to be open to it. And somehow, as time unfolded and events unfolded for me, both in the work world and with my children, different things that happened and occurred. And you know, sometimes you get a 2x4 by the head. Sometimes it's just a little bit of a flick. But each time, if you're really willing, you wake up a little bit more each time. And if not, then you're going to get that 2x4 again. And you can count on it. It's just the way it works. It's life in action. And God didn't promise that things would be perfect. But God did promise that there would be someone, something there with us every single day to hold our hand. There's one of Jesus spoken parables. Well, we know that parables are true life stories sometimes, and sometimes not. They're stories that have been created with a deeper purpose. That's what the study of metaphysics is that when we look at the Bible or some other writing, when we look at it metaphysically, we look beyond what those words said. And if you'd studied it a long time, you'll find the symbolism in that word. Oh yeah, in the Hebrew Bible, when they talked about a house or a sanctuary, they may have been talking about my body temple. When we talked about the eyes, they may have been referring to the sight through the third eye. That's what Jesus was talking about when he was talking about eyes. So a parable is a story, and he used them. And there are some of them that are so well known. One of the best known, of course, is the Good Samaritan. We all know that story, don't we? And he told, of course, the story of the people that came through from Luke 10 in the New Testament. He says, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So did a Levite when he came to the place and saw him. He passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, and remember, a Samaritan, they were not known to be clean by some. So here's a Samaritan that wanted, he's of the other political persuasion, okay? He came where the man was. When he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to the inn, and took care of him. The Good Samaritan was the only one who had mercy upon the man that was half dead and robbed on the side of the road. So we also know that the meaning of the Good Samaritan parable from Jesus is very simple. Love your neighbor as yourself. And he said that again in other places in the Christian scriptures. Love the Lord your God with all your strength. The second commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. And what he said too was, I've come to give you a new law. You've lived by the old law, and it's not working any longer. I've come to give new laws. So we can think of many ways in this world now that we can be good Samaritans, right? I know that those of you that I mentioned earlier, you're all good Samaritans. Everyone in this room, I know you're here because you're good Samaritans. I was thinking of my husband, who had been on a trip to Indiana where he goes and hauls all that heavy equipment that he takes and has a good time playing with the boys with their big toys, their big boy toys. He's coming home tonight, by the way. I remember one year he was on his way to Indiana. We still lived in East Tennessee then, and he was headed up there to visit with his sister. He goes up there. She's a widow, and he helps her with everything on the farm. It's the farm that his great-great-grandfather built. And his sister is so silly. She'll call him, and he's also her go-to man. Her name is Sue, and she can sew anything, makes the most beautiful quilts. They're works of art. But I got off track here, but I promise I'll get back. I remember she called him one day, and I'm listening to him on the phone, and she's asking him about electricity in her sewing room. And he says, "Sue, I was 10 years old when Dad rewired that sewing room, and you're asking me which cable goes to which light switch?" But that's just sort of the way it is with their relationship. So when he gets up there, he's definitely the Good Samaritan, and Sue has about 20 chores ready for him. But she does cook for him and washes his clothes when he's there, so it's a good trade-off. But he was on his way up to Indiana one day, and he called me later. He said, "Well, I'm not going to make it today." And I said, "Well, what happened?" Because he didn't have a trailer with him. He just had his truck. And at that time, I think he had an F-350 dually. And that thing would haul anything. Now, that was a workhorse. I can't remember when he finally sold it just a couple of years ago. It had like 300,000 miles on it or something. Joey remembers it. He's probably driven it at some point. But he said, "Well, I ran into a family that were broken down on the side of the road. They had nothing." He said they were in an old car that he doesn't know how they started out. So he stopped. This was on Interstate, I think it was 75 out of Knoxville up through to, goes up there through Lexington, I believe, and it was in Kentucky. He said they were just barely off the side of the road, a car load of kids. And didn't look like they had 2 nickels to rub together. So he stopped and talked to the man while they were on their way to the hospital for one of the kids. And so he could see he wasn't going to get that car started. So he just hooked it up and chained it up and hauled it to the exit they needed to go to. Got them there, got the car there, and as close as he could to some place to fix it. Took all the money he had out of his wallet and gave it to them. Bought them a meal because they were hungry. And at that point, he just had to wish them well and move on. So he was just calling me and saying that he did all he could for that family, and he felt badly leaving them. But would I pray for them? Now, I know most of you here, I'm ruining his reputation today, but he's not here. I can't. He says I throw him under the bus every Sunday. He's right. He even has a T-shirt that says "Thrown Under the Bus," and it's pretty cute. I'm going to ask him to wear it next Sunday. But I said, "Nan, dear, you've already answered their prayers. You got them to the exit they needed to be at, the doctor they needed to see, and you fed them, and you gave them enough money that till they see another Samaritan that'll come along." And actually, folks, that's what that parable means. How can we be a good Samaritan in our own lives? We can think of it in another way too, as somebody's broken down on the side of the road, and the preacher goes by and he sees them and he says, "Well, I'm busy. I'm headed to my meeting today at the church. I can't possibly stop." Maybe the Rotarian or the elk, he passes by. "Oh boy, I'm late. I don't have time for that." But somebody else will stop for them, But when I get to the meeting, I'm going to say the opening prayer. Right? Then along comes an atheist. He's never, he doesn't confess to God. He doesn't even profess to know of a God. But he sees this man stranded. He stops, helps them, gets them to where they're going. Now, which one, my friends, do you think was most like Jesus that day? I'd say it's the one that didn't even profess to know a God, wouldn't you? And that's what we're called to do, isn't it? That's all we're called to do. We are called to be the demonstration. Jesus talked about when he had come to the place where he was the cosmic Christ. When did that happen? We don't know. We know the story of his young years. We know of him up until the time he was 12. And then there are all those lost years we don't know a thing about. A lot of people say that he went to the Orient to learn. Others have a lot of other speculations, but the truth is, history doesn't know what happened to him during those years. But we do know one thing: when he returned, he was definitely of the Christ consciousness, and he embodied the Christ. He told in stories, affirmations. What I do, you can do. I am the light. You are the light of the world. Do we think he meant it? I do. I'm going to go out and be the Christ today. I guarantee you. It's what I'm going to be. And everyone around me is going to feel God's love. And if I find myself falling into anger, I'm going to calm myself down and I'm going to forgive myself. But I'm going to immediately say, back to center, back to center, back to Christ consciousness. I'm going to forgive it because we're human. We're human. We're not perfect. I know another person that was acting as the Christ. Our friend Roger here, I like to call him out too. I have my favorites, I call on them often. Roger, when his dog Bella, how old was Bella when she passed? 16? 2 years ago or more she passed. 2 years ago she passed. I have a good memory, don't I? For the things I want to remember. Roger and Bella were best friends all those years. When she was a puppy, she'd just run around and sometimes she'd get away from him. I've seen him chase her here at church. And she's gotten away from him, and he had to go all the way down, like 10 streets down, to find Bella. I remember that. She'd even crawl out the window. She had a personality. But you want to know what this cosmic Christ did when Bella got old, couldn't walk anymore, couldn't go anywhere, couldn't follow him, couldn't keep up with him? He had other things he wanted to do, felt like he needed to do with his time. But he'd put her up on the bench and he'd sit with her for hours, talking to her and stroking her and making her feel loved. That's what the cosmic Christ does. That's what you and I are all capable of doing. And I just pray that you will know that every single day of your life. I pray you'll remember those I am statements. I am the light. Because the cosmic Christ said I was, and that I am. You are the light of the world. Now I just challenge each and every one of you to go out and